Okay, so once again, hello everyone, and just we are doing great. So we'll just be doing like a recap of OOP, right? Just so that we can fully understand the concepts and all. So let me start with this, right? So when we talk about class, let me just put this. Let's run this and convert this to a mark. So a class is a blueprint of an object, right? And let me just copy this. Okay, so a class, when we talk about class, right? So first off, when you talk about object-oriented programming, right? It's just all about you trying to model your solution to the real world, which is why we call it object-oriented. Because if, for example, now I'm trying to maybe do something, let's say I just want to calculate, let me use that example. I want to calculate, let's say, um the area of a shape, for example, right? Let's assume the shape to be rectangle. I'm just trying to give that example. Now, what that would mean is I know that rectangle has um some properties, right? I know it actually has like length. I know it also has width, right? So it means that rectangle is more or less like an object, right? So if I'm going to model or trying to create a solution on how to calculate the area of a rectangle, I know first I have to create a part called rectangle, and I have to create like small properties like Oyacha has length, Oyacha has width before going further to specify the method that we use to calculate the area or something, right? So with class, like I said, class is a blueprint of an object. So an object is an instance of a class. And what I mean by that is once you've created a class, it's just the way you create a function, for example, right? You know, after I create, let's say you create a function like this, right? And let's say we take the function, let me put this. And let's say this function is going to just do something like this. I know you've created it. Okay, I forgot to insert this. Now I know you've created this. Now, when we call this, let's pass in comes like this. You just realize that we've created a function, now we are calling the function, right? So similar to a class, it means after creating a class, you need to call the class, right? Which is so by doing that, it means you have to pass in the values and all that. By doing this, we call this you are creating an instance, right? Which is what we are trying to do. So I was just trying to explain something. Please just give me a minute. Okay, so I was talking about class. So I said I decided to give like how do I call it, like an example using function. You know how when you create a function, after creating a function, you have to just call the function once you are done creating it, then you pass in the values, right? So same thing also goes for class. So you create a class. After you're done creating a class, when you want to call it, is we call it an object. It means you are creating an instance of the class you created, which instead of you calling it an instance, you can actually call it an object, right? Now let me start with MC class, for example. Now when you see something is empty, it means the class does not contain anything. Right? Let's create a class called employee. Now if I want to create an empty class, when I mean empty class is not going to contain anything, right? Now if I should try running this, you can see get an error. Now, the way for me to create an empty class by doing pass. Now, this pass is telling this that this class is not doing anything. It's just an empty class. You can see from this, there's nothing there. You just saying, oh, just pass. There's nothing. There's no method. There's no attributes, right? It's just an empty class, right? So created a class called employee, and you can see this class is not doing anything. So even though I decided to create an instance, so me doing this, right? Like when I'm calling the class, see, this is me creating this is me creating an object. So like I said, either you want to call it object or you want to call it an instance of a class, because you've created a class, because you've actually created a class, right? What you're now doing here is you're just creating an object or you're creating an instance of this particular class. Now you can see when I run this is not going to do anything. Why? Because the class is empty. How do we know the class is empty? Like I said, it's either your class contains attributes or it contains methods. But in this case, there's nothing there. The only thing that is there is just pass. Pass will mean that it's not doing anything. That's why we put in pass. Like I said, if you try not to put anything there, you get an error, right? So if you are trying to create an empty class, you just pass what? Pass. You can see when you're trying to create a class, you start with the keyword class. So this is class, the keyword, followed by the class name. So the name of our class is employee, right? And you can see from what you can see, the class is not doing anything, which is why we put pass there, which means the class is not doing anything, right? Let's create more example. Let me just create a class called vector, right? And I put pass. This means that the class is not doing anything, it's empty, right? You can see the class is empty. So even though we decide to create an instance of the class, right? You just notice that the class is not doing anything, right? There's no method, there are no attributes. So this is how to create. Let me just title this MC class, just so that we get what I'm trying to say. Let me say MC class. So this is how you get to create an MC class in Python. Like I said, what they are doing is just creating a class called, what is the name of the class? Employee. And once you put in pass, it means the class is not doing anything, right? So it means this class is what? An empty class. Now, when I give the example of function, right? I give the example of function. And let me just give that same example, right? And I say return a plus b, right? Okay. Now I want to explain something. Now let me create something here. Let's for the function and let's say thread and let's say for. If I say print a, you can see this. Let's call this func2 and let's remove this. And let me say this. Right. Now let me let me explain something. Okay, let me remove this. So I want to explain something. Now look at these two functions. Just before we go back to class. Now if you look at these two functions, you notice something. Now you have two functions. The first function we created is called func. The second function we created is called func2, right? Good. Now there's a difference between these two functions. Now let's forget about the return and let's forget about the print. Now let's look at what is in this. In this scenario, you can see that we created two parameters, A and B. Now, because we created two parameters, so what that means is anytime I'm going to call that function, I need to specify two arguments. Remember, I said that when you are creating a function, these values are called parameters. Then the moment you pass in the values, they become what argument, right? Now, if you look at this, like I said, when we created the function, we specified two parameters, that is A and B. So it means when you will now want to run the function or when you are calling the function, you have to specify two values, the value for A and the value for B, right? Now, look at this. Look at this example. Now, unlike this example, looking at this place, there's nothing there. So it means when I'm calling this function, right, I don't need to pass in any value because from the function declaration, nothing is supposed to be in this bracket. So which means that if I'm calling this, I'm not going to put in any value in this bracket, right? And I'm going to get my results, right, without an error. Let me go over this here. Like I said, created a function here, you specify two parameters. So it means that anytime you're trying to call the function, you have to specify what two values. Values will mean argument, right? So whereas in this case, you have another function, but this function, there's nothing here. So it means if you are calling the function, you do not need to specify any arguments, right? And you're good to go. Now let's come back to class. So the reason why I decided to give that illustration is now in Python or in object-oriented program, let me not generalize, there's something called constructor. Now see this as a constructor. I'm just trying to give a scenario. I see this as a constructor in a way because I'm specifying the values. Because from here, I had to specify A and B. So if I'm going to call the function, I have to specify the values. Same goes for this. But in this case, nothing was specified yet. So it means I do not need to specify this when I'm calling the function. So like I said, in classes, there's something called constructor, right? So that constructor, what it takes is um how do I call it now? The attributes that once you're done creating the class, once you want to call the class, you have to specify the values for those attributes. Now, let me explain what I'm trying to say. Let me still create a class called employee, right? Let me create a class called employee. If I should do something like this, right? I'm just trying to show something. So now let me just stick to name and age. Now you might be wondering, Victor, why do you have to write self here? Right. Now, see self as a placeholder for an object. Now, after creating a class, yeah, you know the class is going to be static. Like it's not going to do anything until unless you call the class. It's just like saying when we created this function is not going to do anything unless you come here and call the function. So same thing goes for the class. So once you've created a class, you just write the code. You're not calling it. It won't do anything. Now it is when you now call the class, which is when you get whatever result you want to get, right? And remember I said when you're calling the class, you're creating an instance of the class. Now, in this case, whenever you're creating an instance of a class, it means you are creating an object. Either you want to call the instance of the class or you want to call it. Now, see this self as a placeholder for the object. It's like saying, oh, once I'm done creating this class, at the end of the day, I'm still going to create an instance, which means I'm still going to create an object. So that this object will be able to have access to this attribute itself, which is why you see self.name equals to name and self.age equals to age. Now let's try to run this. I'm still going to go by this explanation again. Let's create an object, which means I'm creating an instance, right? Now look at something. Let's run this. Now you can see it gives an error. Why? Because it's saying, Victor, when you were creating this class, you already specified that this class is supposed to take, see, you can see, two arguments. For when you are now creating an object, you didn't specify anything here. So I need to specify something. Like Victor, let's say 40, for example. Just giving an example. Now, can you see this? Now, now I'll specify the two values, name and age. So if I now do e.name, I'm able to access Victor. Now remember, look at this. It's like self e. Remember I said see self as a placeholder for the object. So if I do e.age, it should give me what 40. Why? Because when I was creating the class, I already specified that. So it means when I create an instance of the class, anytime I do object.name, please give the value that is in name. We can say name and age, which means Victor and 40. Name is equals to Victor, age is equals to 40. So it means when I do e.name, you can see e.name. It means it should give me Victor, which is name. Can you see this? So it means when I do e.age, it should give me what? It should give me 40. Now, once you are doing this, you are creating a constructor. Let me give another example. Like I said, I'm still going to explain this. Now, let's give another example. Now let me remove this. Let's remove this in this. Let me just say details. And let me just say print employee records. Just for a second demonstration. Let me just print this. Right. Now let's run this. You can see, look at the difference between these two, which is why before now I gave the example of the function. We created two functions, one without parameters, sorry, one with parameters, one without parameters. So the one with parameters, after you are done creating the class, when the function, rather, when you are calling, when you specify the values. Now it means for this one, because you didn't specify any parameter, it means when you are going to call the function, you're not specifying anything. Now let's come back to class. Now in this scenario, you can see we add parameters, name and age. Here, we do not have anything like that. I'm just trying to give you the illustration. So it means this has a constructor, while this does not have a constructor. Now this have a constructor. Why? Because you can see this underscore underscore in it. So it means this is just telling you that, see, Charlie, anytime you want to call this class, or anytime you're trying to create an instance of the class, remember I said, when I want to the instance of the class, I want to say object. So if you see me just say instance of a class, it means I'm talking about objects. Either you would call it object or instance of a class is too long. So it's like you are creating an object, which means you are creating an instance of the class. So if, for example, now I come here and I do the same thing. Let's change this to, let me say Tunde, for example. Let me just use this. Now, this is an instance. This is another instance, which means this is an object, which means it's also what? Another object. Because in the first instance, the name is Victor, age is 40. Now, in the second instance, what happens? The name is Tunde, age is 50. Can you see the logic? So either you say instance of a class or you say an object, right? Now, look at this example. In this case, you can see that even when we are creating the instance, remember I said either you say instance or object, but let me just use object now. Now, so it means that when you're actually creating an object of the class, you do not need to specify anything here. Why? Because there's no init method. There's no constructor here. Can you see this thing? There's no constructor here. Now, unlike this one where there's constructor, how do I know there's a constructor? Because of this underscore init, which means name and age. It means when you're trying to create an instance, you have to pass in two values. A value for name, another value for age. But in this case, you can see there's nothing like init, which means when you're creating the instance, you do not need to what? You do not need to specify anything here. So this is a class with constructor. Let me just write this. This is a class with constructor. Right? And this is a class with no constructor. Let's change this to Markdown. You can see the difference. There's a constructor because of this underscore units. No constructor because there's no underscore units. Can you see the difference? So when we talk about constructor, just see this. Because like you are trying to construct the attributes for the class. In this case, you are not constructing any attribute for the class. So it means there's no constructor. There's constructor because of this underscore unit. There's no constructor because there's no underscore unit. I believe we get the logic. So like I said, this self, see it as a placeholder. So the question is, Victor, do I always have to use this? What if I use another word? You can use another word. I can come here and say, if I don't want to use self, I can remember I say it's a placeholder. So I can come here and say order, for example. Come here and say order. So it means, yeah, I'll just say order dot name. Yeah, I'm also going to say order dot what? Order dot age. If I should run this and I run this, you can see we don't have any issue. Remember, like I said, this is just a placeholder for the object or for the instance you're going to create, right? So either you want to call it self, or you want to call it order. Now, the reason why you just know that maybe most of the code you see, you always see self is because it's not good that maybe this particular programmer is using self, another person is using order. So just for consistency, that's why I see we just focus on self because that's what was used for the examples that were used to illustrate this thing fast. So it's just better to just stick to this, right? Let me remove this, right? And let me ask this question. So I can remove this because I was only just using it to illustrate. Now, here's my question. Let me just put this here. So let me change this. So now here's my question. I'm looking at this class. My question is, does this class as a constructor? That's my question. Does this class as a constructor? So now if your answer is, sorry, I can't run this. Let me remove this. So my question is, does this class contain a constructor? So if your answer is yes, you put one in the chat. If your answer is no, put zero in the chat. This particular class, my question is, does this class has a constructor? This particular class. If your answer is yes, you drop one in the chat. If your answer is no, drop zero in the chat. This particular class, does this class has a constructor? Yes, put one. No, put zero in the chat. Right. Okay, thank you. No, because we can't see the init method, right? So it means this class does not have a constructor. So it means when we now want to create an instance of the class, I do not need to specify anything in the bracket. You can see this bracket, it means this bracket is going to what? This bracket is going to be empty. That's what it means, right? Okay. So let me remove this and remove this. So this is the class with the constructor. This is the class with no constructor, right? Now, let me go back to a class with a constructor. You know why it's a constructor, why we said this as a constructor. There's the underscore in it, which means you're trying to initialize something. So it means when I want to create the instance of the class, I always have to pass in two values. Why? Because looking at this, I have name and age. If, for example, we now went further to add, what can I add? Let me say color, for example, right? Let me say color, for example, right? So my question is, how many, okay, I think it's just, instead of doing this, let me put this on a separate line. So it's not going to make sense. So let me just copy this and put this on a separate line. Let's add color. Now let's come here and instead of writing this again, just come here. So copy, paste, then just say color, just to color. Okay. So my question, let me just go to my question. So my question is, when I'm trying to pass in the values here, right? So my question is, how many values do you think we should put here? Now, we've created a class that has name, age, color. So I'm asking, so how many values do you think this class is going to take? Just drop your answers in the chat. How many values do you think this class is going to take? Is it going to take one? Is it going to take zero? Is it going to take two? Is it going to take three? Is it going to take four? Just drop your answers in the chat. How many values do you think this class will take? Thank you. So it's going to take three. Why? Because you have name, you have age, you have color. So it means first thing first, let's say name is going to be Victor, let's say age is going to be 42, and let's say color is going to be red, for example, right? Something like this. So, okay, look at this. Okay. So it's going to take in 3, right? See, this is a string. Forgot to enclose it in brackets. Okay. So you can see, so that the moment I do a dot name, I get Victor. The moment I do a dot age, I get 42. The moment I do a dot color, I get red, right? Okay, nice. So now the question is, Victor, is it possible for us to change? So like I know that when we created the instance, he said Victor is he said the name is Victor, the age is 42, the color is red. Victor, what if I want to change the name from Victor to Tunde? Do you think it's possible? Do I always have to now initialize the class? Yeah, so if I want to change the name, because presently it does name, right? It does name is Victor. Now I want to change it to Tunde. Now look at this. So I already said e dot name equals Tunde. So if I do in dot name, you can see it as CN2. So let me explain. Now you can see when we created the class, specify Victor, the age, and color. Now we will now want to change the name. So the question is, do I always have to do this? Let me explain. It means do I always have to do this? I will now come here and now change this to Tunde. Like, do I always have to do this? No, you don't always have to do that. All I need to do is remove this. Just say e dot name equals what? So which name do you want to replace Victor with? I want to replace it Tunde. Just ensure that because it's a text, you have to enclose it. So I did e dot name equals Tunde, which means the moment I run this and I run this, you can see the name is no longer Victor, but it has changed to Tunde. So it means if I also want to change age, let's say I want to change this to 50, for example, right? So it means what I'm going to do, I'm just going to do e dot age equals to 50. Can I see this? So it means the moment I call e dot age again, right? If I call e dot age again, you can see the age has been updated to what 50. Can you see the difference now? Right. So you can see these are what classes with what constructors, right? So and I think I already explained a class with no constructor, right? Okay. So let me just stop you to see if anybody has any question before we continue. So does anybody has any question before we continue?
Yes, just wanted to confirm something.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So you made the way you made changes, right? Like e dot name and all of that, e dot
Yes,
age
yes,
again.
yes,
Is already affecting the employee class already, right? That means it changes everything in
yes,
the employee class automatically.
yes, yes. It changes the name automatically. Yes,
Problem. Thank you.
yes. So I think yes, what I'm going to say, right? Now, we've not going to take encapsulation. Now, when we get to encapsulation, that's when we are going to talk about public attributes and private attributes. Now, this is a public attribute, which means you can change it at any point in time. You can change your name and all that, right? Something like this, right? So the moment I change Ido's name, it affects the name here. It means I've already updated it, right? So it means it's no longer going to be Victor, but it's not going to be Tunde, right? Okay. So all of the examples we've looked at, we noticed that have I created any method so far? Okay. Okay, except this class. Now you can see this class, it does not have a constructor, but it has the method. Now here's the thing. Now, if this was standing on its own, right? We'll just say, this is a function. It's a function because you can see the def key, right? So you say, oh, definitely it's a function, right? But anything that makes it to be in a class, inside a class, it goes from you calling it a function to what to a method. Let me explain what I'm trying. Let me just copy this. Okay. Like this, you can see it's standing on its own. Standing on its own. This is a function. Def keyword, the function name. You don't have to write def here because you're not in a class, right? Good. Okay. You don't have any problem, right? But now the moment you move this from it standing on its own, so you becoming under this, it becomes a method. It's just like saying, for example, let me give you the example. Let's assume that someone who used to have let's assume that a person has like, let me see, a small bungalow, right? Perhaps things were rough for him or something. Decide to sell the house off, then decide to rent an apartment. Now he has moved from becoming a landlord to a tenant, right? Because he now stays in a rented apartment. So you can't call him a landlord, you have to call him a tenant, right? So similar to this, if a function is tenant on its own, you call it a function. But the moment it becomes, or the moment it's now in a class, it becomes a method. So you can't call it a function. It's now a method, which is why I give that example. You used to have your house, but now you now live in a rented apartment. Okay, you can't call you a landlord. You can only address you as what of a tenant, right? So now, let's look at creating classes constructors and perhaps also like including methods and all that. So I think I'm just going to combine this. Let me just copy this and put it here. So let's see, let's call this a class, this constructor and method. Now, let me explain something. Now, these are attributes. I think I mentioned that name is an attribute, age is an attribute, color is an attribute, right? But this is the method. You can see the difference. This is an attribute. Attribute. Name is an attribute. Age is an attribute. Color is an attribute, right? But this, you can see there's nothing like in it here. This is a method. I just wanted to clarify that. Now let's a class with the constructor and method. So instead of doing, let's just call this again and just put it here. We've already created the constructor. Now let's create the method. So let's just copy this. And let's just put it. So let's just call this the same thing, employee records. So if I do this and I say A equals employee, right? Um, so passing names, instead of having to write it again, I'm just trying to copy and where is it? Paste it here. Okay. So you can see this. If I do E dot details, for example, you can see it just say employees records, right? So you can see when I'm calling attributes, you can see there's no parentheses. Age, you can see there's nothing like parentheses. That I mean, like I'm talking about this bracket, but I do e dot color. Can you see this? But the moment I want to call that method, see details. Can you see the way it's showing? So because it's a method, I have to specify this so that I can get the result itself, right? Okay. Now you might have heard of this stuff where you see people will call this instance. Now there's instance attributes and there's a class attribute. So I wonder, Victor, what is the difference? Now let me explain something. Now these are instance attributes. Now these are instance attributes. Now let me give an example. Right. I just want to show you something. Let's sorry, markdown. Let me just copy this. Uh sorry. Copy then paste it here. Okay. Um attributes and instance attributes. Right. Okay. So let me see stick with this. Let's see something like this. I'm going to explain. Let me just see it zero. Now, I'm going to explain what I'm doing here. Now, you see this place. Maybe I should add a comment. This is the class attribute. Now, I'm going to explain the difference. This is the class attribute, right? And all these ones are instance attributes. Now, let me just copy this. So I'm going to explain what that means. We've created this, right? Now let's create instances. So you see what I'm trying to do. Okay. So Let's say this is instance one. Let's create another one. Let's call this instance two. Now let's change this to Tunde, right? Let's change this to 50. Now let's change this to blue. So this is first instance because this is the first object you're creating, right? The second instance. Remember I said I can also call this object. So writing this again, just copy and paste it. Okay. So second instance or objects, right? So first instance, second instance, right? Now let me still stay on first instance. Now if I do e1 dot name, for example, is Victor, right? Let me do e1 dot h 42, right? Now let's look at this. E2 dot name, Sunday, E2 dot h. Let me come back here. So I want everyone to see something. So what did I call it? I call this user account, right? Let me just copy this. So you see the difference. Look at something. Now we went ahead to create. Let me just run this again. Okay, good. Now we created the class. Now the class has class attribute. You also had instance attribute. Now, after we did that, now you can see this attribute is outside the constructor. Can you see this? Now you can see the first time when we created the first instance, we specified Victor, age is 42, color is red. We did e1 dot name, it gave us Victor. Now we did e1 dot age, it gave us 42. Now we did e1 dot user counts, it gave us 0, right? Now look at this example. We decided to create another instance. The name is Tunde, age is 50, color is blue. We did e2 dot name, it gave us Tunde. E2 dot age, it gave us 50. Now e2 dot user, it still gave us 0. So you can see these values belongs to this instance, which is why we call it instance attribute, right? Now you can see this 20, 15, and blue belongs to the second instance, which is why we call it instance attribute. So even though you create 10 instances, 4 instances, when you do e1.user count, it is always going to give us 0. Why? Because it does not belong to any attribute. It's like it's standing on its own. Let me go over what I'm trying to say. This is outside the constructor, which makes it a class attribute, right? So it means you can say in this case Victor 42, right? So if you do in1 dot name, Victor, you see Victor age, this the value for age, value for color, it only belongs to this object. Now when we create another object and we do e2 dot name, we will never see Victor. Why? Because this is his own properties. But you see, this is for everybody. This user account is for everybody. So if I come here and also create, let's create another instance. So I come here and create the third instance, right? Let me see E3. Let me call this let's see Grace. And let me just say 32. And I use this. Right. Now if you say E3 does user count, you can see this, you can see this. It's still gonna give us 0, right? Because it belongs to everybody. It's just like saying a wealthy man, for example. I mean to use the example. Let's say a wealthy man decides to have 2 children, for example. Now he says, okay, my estate in Abuja belongs to the firstborn. My estate in, let me see, Port Harcourt belongs to the second, right? And the money in my account belongs to everybody. So it means the estate in Abuja belongs to this person. The estate in PH belongs to this, but the man money belongs to all the children, right? Because it's their father, right? Which means that this class attribute belongs to, so even though you create 3 instances, 4 instances, 5 instances, it belongs to all the instances. But you see, this attribute belongs to their respective. So it means if I create an instance, create another instance, create another instance. If I do e.name, for example, I will never see Tunde because e.name has its own properties. This one also has its own attributes. This one also has its own attributes. But you see the user count, which is outside, it belongs to everybody, which is why we call it class attributes. So no matter how many instances you get, when you call the user account every single time, it is always going to give you 0. Why? Because it belongs to everybody. Whereas this belongs to instance. So For instance, now you create this first one. This has its own attributes. Name for this object is Victor. Age is 42. This one, its own name is Tunde. Age is 50. Its own this thing is Grace, and the call and the value for age is 132. But see, this user account, it belongs to everybody, which is why we call it class attributes. And these are what instance attributes. So I don't know if that explains what I'm trying to do. Let me just stop it to see if anybody has any questions before we continue. Does anybody have any questions before we continue? Okay, so if what we talked about, so if it is clear, can we just drop one in the chat just so that I can move to the next thing? If what we talked about, if it is clear, please can you just drop one in the chat just so that we can move to the next thing. Please, I need my response. I want to be sure that we are all on the same page. Right? I want to be sure that we are all on the same page. Right? Okay. So we are all on the same page, right? Okay. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is that okay? I think I named this. Next thing I want to talk about is encapsulation. Private, that's where you have private attributes and public attributes, right? Let me just, okay. Encapsulation. Let's change this to lockdown. No, encapsulation. Now, one thing about encapsulation is encapsulation actually protects data from being accessed or modified directly. Now, for example, if you look at your ATM card, right? Now, except you decide to tell any other person your password, right? The only person who knows your password is yourself, right? Not anybody, right? So it means you take your ATM card, you slot it in the ATM, follow the procedure, then you're required to enter your password. Like I said, the only person who knows that, right, is just you. Who knows the password to the ATM card is you, right? Which means that it is private to you as a person. Now, but your name, the name, if for example now someone asks you, please send your account details, the account name, and let's say the account number. Those information are public because they are not, how do I put it now? Like um it can actually be accessed by anybody. Anybody who wants to send you money can easily just check the account details and just confirm if the account name corresponds with what has been sent to the person, right? But you see, the password to your ATM card is private. So this is what I'm trying to say. So when it comes to the calculation, we have private attributes, we have public attributes. So public attributes can be accessible anywhere. For private attributes, there's how do I put it now? There's a way to sort of like go about it. Now let me explain. Let me explain what I'm trying to say. Now let me since I already gave the example of bank accounts. Now let me decide to use bank account. Like I said the calculation. Let me just add this changes to markdown. So I said the calculation. Sorry. Protects data from being accessed directly, right? So and I also mentioned that you have public attributes, right? And you have private attributes. Okay. So you have public attributes, you have private attributes. So you see, all of these attributes is created. These are what public, public, everything. All of the attributes created so far. They are public attributes. Now, I'm going to show us how can we create private attributes? That's the next question, right? So let's create a class called account, for example, right? Now let's see, just like I said, just for demonstration purposes. So let's see accounts. Let's just say just contain order. Let me just order. That's like the name of the person. Let me read like that. The balance, something like this. Let me say name, for example. So you get what I'm trying to say. Now, if I say self dot name, equals name. This is public. Now, if I want to do for, how do I call it now? If I want to do for balance, I feel like account balance should be private, right? Except you want to disclose it, but it should be private. So now, how do you create a private attribute? Underscore underscore. Yeah, so you're using underscore twice, right? Balance, sorry, equals to balance. So what that means is, you see this name? This name is a public attribute because you're just writing a name like that. The moment you put underscore underscore, it changes from what public to what private. So this is what a private attribute. Let me just copy it. So this becomes a private attribute, right? This becomes a private attribute. Look at something. Now let's check something else. Because this is private, this is public. Now let's check something else. Back account. Let's see Victor, right? And let's see account balance. Let me just traffic example. Okay. Now let's do a dot name, right? A dot balance. Let me change it. Can you see this? Now let's take this again. Now for public attributes, you just write the stuff, but private underscore underscore. Yeah, so you're writing underscore twice. Public, this is public attribute, this is private attribute. Now we try to create an instance, right? Like, I said it means you're creating an object. Now I specified the account name is Victor. The balance is 12,000, right? Now ADOS name is, we are able to access it, it gives us Victor. Now look at, we already created ADOS dash dash balance. When we try to access, look at what it's telling us. As an attribute balance. Why? Because it is private. Like you can't access it directly. It is private, right? It is private. So the question is, how do we access it? Remember, if I maybe I should just copy this and put it here. Let's, if this was not there, let me create another. I'll just copy this. Now let's assume that we took this. Let me run this so you see what I'm talking about. Now, if I had done a dot balance here, can you see we can access it because it's public. Let me change this because it is public attributes, right? Now, but in this case, can you see this? Now it's not private because of this underscore underscore. Remember, I said if you want to create a private attribute, underscore twice, it's underscore twice, then balance. Now we created an instance code. We try to access name, perfect. Now we try to access balance. Look at what it's telling us. Charlie, this does not exist. Now it's telling us this because it is a private attribute. So you can't, it's not easily accessible. So the question is, how do we now access, because I'm able to access the name. How do I access the balance? For example, on your ATM card, your name is written on the ATM card. So it means your name is public, right? But your account balance, except maybe let's assume that, let's remove the XMS or you receiving back a lot. If I want to check the balance on my account, I have to slot the ATM card, follow the procedure, enter my password, I'm able to access my own balance. But on the ATM card, anybody can easily see my name. Oh, your name is Victor, something like that. Except I tell you my account balance, I don't think you will know what is in my account. So which means it is private. So it's not easily accessible, which is why we try to make it private. So the question is, how do we now access this? Because if I'm trying, I want to be able to see my balance, right? So how can I access this? Now, this is what you can do, right? So you create the get method. Remember, it is not easily accessible, right? So you have to create the get method. So let me just copy this and paste it here. Now we've created this in it. So if I want to access the balance, I need to create a get method. So let's call this get balance. Now I pass in self. So this is going to return self dot underscore balance, right? Let's run this. Let me just copy this and paste it here. Right, sorry. I need to copy the wrong thing. This is what I want to copy. Copy, paste it here. Let me run this, and do a dot get balance. Now, can you see this? Can you see I'm able to get 12K? So it means I need to create, which is why it's called encapsulation, right? Because you're trying to protect data from being accessed directly. Trying to say, okay, you know what? Nobody can easily access my account balance, which is why I have to slot in my ATM card, maybe enter my password if I'm able to access my own. Like I said, let's forget about your alert and SMS, right? Okay. So because the attribute is private, it means I need to create a get method. So that get method allows me to now view because I can't just access it directly. I have to pass through a miss, right? It's just like saying you want to check your account balance. Let me see that stuff. It's either you slot your ATM card on the ATM or you go to your bank app, enter your password before you can access your balance. So it's not easily accessible. So it means that if I want to access it, I need to create a method, right? Which is this get balance. This get balance will now help me access my balance, which is what we did there. You can see this, right? Which is what we did there. Get balance, right? Now, so the question would be, Victor, I'm just trying to demonstrate something. So the question would be, Victor, before now, you give an example where we are able to change the value. We are able to change, where's that place? Looking for the part where I changed the value from Victor to Tunde. Okay, good. So Victor, I know this is public. So let's assume that I want to change the value of my balance, which is not possible. I'm just trying to give an illustration because except you make payments, you can't change the balance of in your account, right? Except you make deficits rather. So let's assume that I want to change. I'm just trying to give an illustration. I want to change the balance, right? Which, like I said, it does not really make any sense because except you make deposits, your account balance remains the same, right? So how do I change? So if I'm using get method to access the stuff, so it means if I'm using get to access my balance, it means if I want to change, I need to use set method to change my balance. This is what I'm trying to say. I need to let me just copy this here and paste it here, right? So let me just make this set. So I want to change the balance, right? So I need to remember, it's not easily accessible. So you have to pass through a method to access it. So let's call this new balance. So it means I'll just do self dot dash dash balance equals to new balance. Can you see? So I'm using set and get method. Set method to change my balance, get method to access my balance, right? So if I run this and let's copy this, right? And I run this, right? Now I want to change it. I want to change this. I'll just say a dot what set balance. Can you see this? If I pass 14K, for example, and I now do a dot get balance, for example, can you see that it has changed to 14K? Now, because this attribute is private, so if I want to if I want to access it, there has to be a method for it. If I want to change it, there also has to be a method for it, which is what this set method. Can you see this? Why? Because it's a private attribute, so you cannot access it directly. If I come here and say a dot balance, you can see error. Or if I do dash dash balance, you can see it's an error because it's a private attribute, so you can't easily access it except you pass through the method to access it, right? Okay. Now let me just stop here to see if anybody has any question. Please, if this is not clear, just let me know so that I can explain it again. If this is not clear, just let me know so that I can explain it again. Okay. So I believe you're on the same page, right? Let me check the chats. Dollar, this one you're saying pour me water. What's going on? What's going on?
No, I'm just looking at his name, both private and public account balance.
Okay, like because your account balance is like maybe like 50 million. I'm just thinking that like this one Victor is just 12K. Is that what it's really about?
No, it's just like the encapsulation. I'm just trying to okay, to
Okay.
understand more. Like the
On,
private one
oh,
has
okay.
like double underscore, right? The
Yes, the
private one
private
has
one,
like
yes.
double.
Yeah, the one last call,
But
yes,
this
yes,
second
yes.
one, this one that you did deposit for, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's another. That
No, this
second
is
one
another
is another
example.
discipline.
Yes, another example I want to do.
Okay, 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 okay. No problem.
Yeah, it's another example, yeah. You know, in real life, you can't just change your account balance except you deposit. So I was only just illustrating this so that okay, you can easily so if you are using a method to access your balance, you can easily change it, right? So we want to deposit, right? Let's as you want to deposit money. So now let me explain this. Your name, like I said, your name is accessible. So even on your ATM card, anybody can just see your name there. But your account balance is private to you, except you decide to close it, which is why we decided to make the attribute private, right? Now, there are two things you can do. It's either you withdraw money or you deposit money. It's either I deposit or I'm trying to withdraw money, right? So there are other methods, but I'm just trying to focus on two. I want to deposit and I want to check my account balance. Let me just leave it as limited to those two. Now, if I want to deposit money, it means, which is why we need to put amount. So it's like you want to deposit, it means you're adding the money to your existing balance, which is why we did self dot underscore balance plus or equals to amount. So it means I want to deposit, I'm adding money to like how do I call it? Like the money that is in my account before now, right? Why forget return door is like you are checking your account balance. So you're not doing any addition, you're just checking your account balance. If I run this and I run this, for example, right? See this. And I say a dot deposit. Now let's say I want to deposit. Let's assume that Bonner decided to just show love on Victor and send it to 50K. Now we decide to do this and I check get banner, right? Now you can see that it's 2K, which means that the money that has been deposited has been added to the balance, which is 12K. So this is where it was. So you can see this balance, I cannot easily access my account balance unless maybe I check my bank app or I maybe use PS to check my account balance or I use ATM card, right? Which means it's private to me. So I'm trying to access my account balance. I need to pass through a method, right? So which is this? It is a private attribute. Yes. If I'm trying to access I need to create a method that allows me to access. That's why it's called a calculation because it's like you're trying to protect the data from easily from the stuff being accessed by other people, right? So that's just the whole concept about encapsulation, right? So there means when you're creating attributes, some attribute has to be private. Why? Because you don't want information being linked to other people. For example, now imagine which I am very sure is not possible. Imagine a situation by an ATM card is playing your account balance, right? So even someone that actually dresses like looking like oh like you just say so now one can even get for account when they do that kind of thing, which is not possible. So it means some attribute has to be private. It means some attribute has to be protected just so that the information is not easily accessible by anybody, which is why you have this the whole encapsulation talk, which is why you have to create a private attributes. If I want to access anything there, I have to create a method that allows me to access it, which is what is get balance, right? I'm trying to make payments, it's deposit, which is, like you're adding, how do I call it now? You're actually adding money to the existing amount in your account, right? So this is like the whole concept of encapsulation, right? So I'm just going to stop here to see if anybody has any questions. Please, if it's not clear, just let me know so that I can explain it again. Okay, so if it is clear, let us drop one in the chat. If it is clear, let us drop one in the chat. If it is clear, please let us drop one in the chat. If it is clear, let us drop one in the chat. If it is clear, let us drop one in the chat. Please, like I said, if it's not clear, if you want me to take it again, please just let me know so that I can explain it again. But if it is clear, let us drop one in the chat. If it is clear, let us drop one in the chat. I need more response. Like I said, if it's not clear, just tell me, Victor, I want you to take it again, and I'll gladly explain it again. All right. So if it is clear, Okay. Let me take it again. Right. Let me start from here. The whole concept about encapsulation is you're trying to protect data from it being accessible. Right. Now, if let's try to look at it from this angle. If I ask you that what are things in your account that are easily accessible by everybody, you will say my account name, right? Because even if I show you my ATM card, you can easily see the name of the account, right? Or what other thing can be accessible? I think your account, okay, yes, your account number, right? So if I decide to send my account number to someone, you can easily see, okay, this is the account details, the name, the account number. But those things that are private to you are your account balance and your password, right? Now we just decided to focus on account balance. Let's focus on account balance and account name. So if let's assume that we are trying to create a program. So it means from what I've said, your account name will be public, but your account balance should be private, except the customer chooses to disclose that to their family or their friends, right? So it should be private, right? So it means if I'm going to create a private attribute, now instead of me saying balance, it means for private attribute, it's going to be underscore balance. This is where it's going to be. So the difference is this is private, this is public. It's public because I'm just writing the word balance. This is private because it's an underscore twice. Underscore, underscore. Now, because there's an underscore twice, this already makes it what private. As mean this underscore was not there, it is public. But the moment you put two underscore, it becomes private. Now, when it becomes private, it means you can't easily access it. Now, which was why when we created a class, we decided to create a class. Let's do this. Okay. So, which is why if you look at this first, okay, this was the first example I gave. I think in this first scenario, these two attributes are public. Why? Because there was no underscore there. It's just name, balance. So the moment we created an object and we did a dot balance, you can easily access it. Why? Because, so let me run this again. So we can easily access it because it is a public attribute, right? Good. Now we now say, okay, fine, this balance should not be public. It should be private. It should be private to each customer, right? So let's make the attribute private, which is why we changed it from public to private. You can say in this case it was public, there was no underscore. Now, the way for us to make this attribute private is by including underscore twice. Like you are writing underscore first, another underscore. That's so the moment we did this, it made this private. Now we still did that same instance. We call that we did a dot name. The moment we try to, you can see, look at the name underscore private. The moment we try to do that, you can see it gives us an error. I'm wondering maybe Victor, because you put underscore in front of it, right? Okay, sorry. Let's let's change this to balance. Now let me see. Okay, it's still referring to the other class that I created. This other class I created. So let me just remove this. Okay. Now we did a dot underscore balance. You notice that, but Victor, this underscore is here now. How come it is saying, how come it's saying this? How come it's telling us it does not have any attributes called this? The reason is you've already made this private. So if you try to access it directly, this is not going to work. You will get an error because it's telling you, have you forgot you already made this private? So you're trying to access something that's private. I don't know. So it means that if I want to access my balance, I need to create a pathway that allows me to access my balance. Just like saying, the question is if you say each customer's balance for each customer should be private to them. So how do they access their account balance? They can use the ATM or they can use their bank app to access their balance. So it means if you want to access the balance, we need to use a method to be able to access the balance, which is why we have to create a method called get underscore balance. So the question is, Victor, do I always have to write get balance? Yeah. What if I write something else? Reason why it's just good. It's just good. So if I say get balance, anybody that is looking at this will know that, oh, this function is trying to get the balance. Now, like I said, you can use any name you want to use. It's fine. But you want to be sure that anybody that is looking at your code can easily understand, okay, this is what this method is doing, which is why I said get balance. Now, if I say get underscore balance, what it means is I want to access my account balance. Now, how do I access my account balance? Now, remember my account balance is self.__underscore balance. So it means I'll just need to say return this, which this contains my balance, right? Which is why we have to do this. So you can see if I run this, now I want to access my balance. I can't do this. Let me write this again. Sorry. I can't do this. Why? Because it's a private attribute. It means, remember, I now have a method that allows me to access my account balance. So which is what get_balance. The moment I do this, let me run this again. So you can see the moment I do this, I can now get my account balance, which is what ref You can see this. Why? Because I already created a method. It's like saying you have your ATM card. The moment I slot my ATM card to the ATM, I can easily check my account balance. So it means I've used the ATM, which is the method to access my account balance, or I can use my bank. So the bank app or the ATM is a method for accessing your account balance. Let me just put it in that light, right? So it means in this case, we've created a method that allows us to access our account balance. The moment I call that method, it means I can now access my account balance, right? Now, I now went further to say that before now, there was an example we did. Let me go up. Yeah, I'm trying to look for that place now. Where is it? Yeah, where we changed the name from Victor to Tunde. I just did it does name equals Tunde. So the question is, Victor, now that you said that this attribute is private, what if I want to, where's that place? What if I want to change the value? Now, like I said, initially, this is not possible because we're leaving for it to change your account balance if you make deposits, except there's an error with the bank or something, right? If for my account balance to change, it's either there's a debit or there's a credit, either I'm depositing money into the account or the bank decides to deduct money from me, which is going to alter the account balance I have, right? So, but I just wanted to give that illustration. Let's assume I want to change the value, right? Now, remember, I can't access this. I can't access this because it is private. So it means in order for me to do that, we need to create another method that allows us to change. Now we have two methods. One that allows us to get our balance, and another one that allows us to what? Make payment, right? That's just the way it is, right? So, like I said, we have two methods now. One that allows us to change the value in the account, right? And another method allows us to access the value, right? So in what I do, we created an instance here, right? Let me run this. Now you can see, because I want to change the value, I now did set balance, which means, so it's me telling it now, remember I've already created a method that allows me to change the value. When I pass in 14K, it means I'm changing the value. So if I now check the account balance, right, you can see it has changed from 12K to what, to 14K, right? Okay. Now, like I said, I was only illustrating. So which means that in real life, this is not possible. You can't just alter your, if this is possible, it means I can change my account balance from whatever it is to billions now. It's possible, but it's not possible. So it means that I need to make a deposit to the bank before my account balance can move from whatever value it's in, right? So which is why I have to change it to deposit. So it's like I want to deposit something. I want to deposit money, right? Which means that the money is going to be added to my what original balance. This is why we did plus equals to amount. When you deposit, the money will be added to your balance and all that, right? So we changed that from set to deposit because the right way is to deposit your money, which is why we have to do this. So it means if I do a.deposit and I pass a 50K, remember I already created a method that tells you that my account balance, please add this money to the money I have in my account rather, right? So if I do 50,000 and I now try to check the account balance, you can see it's now 62,000. Why? Because I've made, initially I had balance of 12K, but I already made a deposit of 50K, which has increased my account balance from 12K to 60K. So, Messi, please, is it clear now?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sorry, I think someone said, okay. I
I
think
said
someone
yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
okay, no problem. Thank you very much. Right, okay. So, does anyone has any other question before we continue? Okay, so I'm guessing we are all on the same page, right? Okay, so just a quick question. Now, the next one to look at is inheritance, but do we want like a 5 to 10 minute break before we continue, or we can continue? So let me just write. If you want us to take a 5 minute break, just drop one in the chat. If you want us to continue, drop 0 in the chat. 5 minutes break. Okay, well, 5 minutes or 10 minutes break. All right. So if you want us to take a 5 minute break, just drop one in the chat. If you want us to continue, drop 0 in the chat. Right. So the next concept we are looking at is inheritance. But just before I continue, should we go for that short break, or we can? Okay, you want us to go for a break, right? Okay. So this is 3:26, right? So that would mean that by 3:36. Okay, let's say 10 minutes. 10 minutes should be okay, right? 10 or 5 minutes, let's say 10 minutes. That would mean by 3:36, we should be back from our short break. Okay. Okay. Let me, let me explain what I'm trying to do. Let me just create a class called employee, for example. So I'm going to use that as an example. And dev init. I'm going to explain where the concept of inheritance came from. Right. So let me just make this very short name. I'm also copy this. Sorry. Copy this and paste it here. Let me see. Let me change this to manager, for example. Right. And let's see, also has to do the same thing. And let me also add this. Right. Let me just say print. This is the manager. I'm just giving an example. Now, if you look at these two classes, now you have a class called employee. You also have a class called manager, right? Now, what do you notice? You notice that the two classes, they have the same constructor, because what it means is this particular class, you can see you have self, the name. Maybe I should add, let me just add this. Let me just add, let me just add this. I just want to illustrate something. Let me add this. Let me just say print you work in Google. Let me do this so you see what I'm trying to say. Okay. Now let me see. Okay, you work in Google. Good. Okay. Now look at something. Now you have two class. The first class is called the employee class. The second class is called the manager class. Now the first class, you notice that there's a constructor, and the constructor only has name. Now I also noticed that there's a method. The method is called company. And the company says you work in Google. That's the company method. Now we now have another class, right? Now this class has the same constructor because it's name, right? Now you also has the method that is in this employee class. Now this is what I'm trying to do. So it means that we are literally repeating that, because this same thing that I wrote here, I also have it here. So it's like we are repeating ourselves, right? And I actually said that most of the time when you're refactoring your code, you always just want to ensure that you follow the the dry framework. When I see dry means do not repeat yourself, or don't repeat yourself, right? Because now I have a class called employee. Now I have a need self, it's just only name. I have the company method. You work in Google. I have another class name. I also have the same method. You work in Google. So the question is, how do we ensure that we are able to write, or we are able to refactor this code, and we do not repeat ourselves, because we are mentioning this constructor and the it's also yet. Is there a way for us to just ensure that, since this already has this, that how do we just ensure that this will just, it will just make reference to this, so that we don't have to come here and write it again? So this is where inheritance comes into play. So instead of us having two separate classes like this, right? Can you see this? Where this is having constructor and complement. This is also having constructor and complement. Like this can be found here. So is there a way for us to just avoid repeating ourselves? So all we need to do is, let me just copy this, right? And paste it here. Let me also copy this, right? And paste it here. Now, so what it means is, remember, we are trying to avoid repeating ourselves. So it means, what if I remove this and find a way to link this with this? So it means this can now inherit from this, right? So what it means is I do not have to repeat myself. So the moment I do this, it knows that I also have this and I also have this. So this is where the whole concept of inheritance comes into play. So you can see here we had two separate classes, but the two classes, they have the same constructor and they also have the same method. So it's like what we are, the information we have here, you're also writing it here. Why? So is there a way for us to link these two, which is where inheritance comes into? So instead of me having to repeat myself, so am I saying for the other stuff that is also here, please check the employing class. This is why I said this is where inheritance comes into. So if I should run this, what is the issue? What is the issue? On work, okay, I forgot to include this. So if we should run this and run this, right? So let's do some, right? Okay. What else? What else? Okay, name. Don't mind me now. Let's see. Victor. Right. Now I can see dot company, right? Small lowercase m. Can you see this? Now you can see we've gone from this part to this part. Now it means you're no longer repeating this. So you might wondering, but so what it means is, you know, the manager of a company is also an employee because he's actually hired by someone. So imagine you are creating a database. You're now saying employee, you also listed the manager. And when you're talking about managers in the company, his name is also listed. Do we always have to repeat his partner information? Is there a way we can link it so that once you see this, you know, okay, this particular person is the manager. So we don't have to go create another stuff, be filling the same personal information. So this is what I'm trying to say. We actually have two different classes. But these two classes, this has company and this also has the constructor and the company method. So how do we rewrite this in such a way that we don't have to repeat ourselves? So it can mean this, that's why I say this is where inheritance comes into. Because instead of you having to come here and write init and company, you can let this inherit from this. So that you automatically also have access to all of these methods. And we can use any of them as we wish to just sort of like go with that. So this is where the whole concept of inheritance comes in. You're trying to just ensure you do not repeat yourself. So it means this definitely inherits from this class. So you can see, in as much as I do not specify init and company yet, this also has access to a constructor and it also has the company method, right? Like I said, this is where the whole concept of inheritance come into play, right? So the question is, what are the types of inheritance? Right, we actually have like different types of inheritance. We have single inheritance, we have multiple inheritance, we have multi-level inheritance, we have hierarchical inheritance, right? So let me start with single inheritance. You can see this. This is inherited from this, which is so the way you do inheritance is the class that is inherited from another class, write it in the bracket. This is what I'm trying to do. If you look at this, this is the parent class, right? Either you want to call it parent class or you want to say this is the word, the super class. It all depends on the name you want to give. Any name you want to give it, it's fine. Depends, or you can call it super class. Now, how do we know that? Because when we come to this class, we notice that in this bracket, we can see the class name here. So this is telling us that this manager is inherited from this particular class, right? That's just the way it is. It's inherited from what this particular class. It's just like saying, for example, if here Aliko Dangote, right? Now, And we now maybe I don't think I know, maybe like Aisha Dangote. I think like his daughter's name is Aisha. If I'm not mistaken. Now, so the moment you hear Dangote, the next thing that comes to, are you related to so person, right? So it means whatever inheritance Dangote has, because that lady bears Dangote, right? Like obviously they are related, right? It means that anything that belongs to her dad also belongs to her, because she sort of like inherits that from her dad, right? So what it means is, because we can see this name here, this is telling us that this manager class is inheriting from the employee class. So that makes the employee class the parent class, or if you want to call it the super class, and that makes this what? That makes this the child class, right? Or you want to call it the sub class. It all depends on the name you want to call it. Like I said, there are different types of inheritance, right? We have single inheritance. Single inheritance is what we just did now. So let me just, instead of having to type again, let me just change this to markdown, convert this, and let's just copy this. Instead of having to write it again, right? So this is single inheritance. It's just inheriting from just one parent class, right? I think it's just inheriting from just one parent class, which is why it's single inheritance, right? Okay, I didn't. Like I said, it's just inherited from a single parent class, which is why it's called single. You're only just inheriting from one person, right? Just single, right? Which is why you call it single inheritance class, right? Okay. Now, I'm still going to explain this again, but let me just quickly explain multiple. I think that would be, sorry. Let me delete this, right? Okay, that's coming. I'm just to markdown. Now, like I said, I'm going to explain this inheritance again. I want to just quickly explain what, so that you get what I am trying to say. Let me quickly explain this multiple class. Okay, let me just use this example. Class rich man. Don't mind me. I just want to. Sorry. Rich man, right? Let me just call this class rich man. And let me just copy this. Right. So let's see last name. Last name equals to last name. I just want to explain something now. So let's say you inherit the property. Let's just say you inherit. Okay, so let me also create another class. Let's call this rich woman. The same thing. Let's call this property 1. Let's call this property 2, right? And then it's rich woman property. Now let's now let's create another class. Now let's call this child. Okay. Let's just call this own property. This is your own property. So like I said, I'm going to explain what I'm doing. I just want to. So rich man and rich woman. Okay, rich man. Okay. So let me run this again. Now this is multiple inheritance, right? Which is why I just went with this example. Because the child, so let's assume that the child that happens to be just me just trying to just create a very funny example. Let's assume that the guy's dad is Dangote, and the guy's mom happens to be Who's the richest woman in Africa? I think Alakija or something. So let's assume that the child, the dad is Dangote, right? And the mother is this woman. I'm just giving an example. So that's like multiple inheritance because you're not just inheriting from Dangote, this is the richest man now. You're also inheriting from this woman. So it's like you're a big boy. Let me use that word. Right? So like you're inheriting from both Dangote and you're also inheriting from Alakija because Dangote is a rich man. This is also a rich woman. So whatever property she has as a child, I'm inheriting that. Whatever property Dangote has. So I'm not just inheriting from one person. I'm inheriting from more than from Dangote and from Alakija, right? Which is why we call it multiple inheritance. But in this case, let's assume that the only body who is rich, the only person who is rich is Dangote. You are just the son of Dangote. That's like your mom is just. Let me just say Dangote is like the only rich person, right? So it means you're only inheriting from just Dangote because it's like the only rich man you actually have, right? Yeah, just inheriting from just, which is why we call it single inheritance. But for multiple, the example I gave, your dad is Dangote, your mom is Alakija, right? So it means that you're inheriting from Dangote and you're also inheriting from Alakija. So this is multiple inheritance. Why this is what single inheritance? So single inheritance is you're only inheriting from just a single parent class. Now, but for multiple inheritance, you're inheriting from more than one. So when I say multiple, it can be it can be two, can be three, can be four. So it's just like saying your dad is Dangote, your mom is Alakija. Let's say your uncle is Adeleke, for example.
Ẹ bá lọ fọ gbogbo kíní síta ni o, kí má kí wọn kàn bá. Ìjọba mi fomi ṣàn gbígbó bíbẹ̀, ẹ má fi yàn bá.
So sorry about that. So it means that your dad is Dangote, your mom is Alakija, and your uncle is Adeleke. They will those that. So it means you're inheriting from three. You're inheriting from Dangote, who's your dad. You're also inheriting from Alakija, right? You're also inheriting from Adeleke, which is what's multiple inheritance. You're not just inheriting from one person, but you're inheriting from more than one person, which is why we call it multiple inheritance. But for single, you're only inheriting from one parent class. For multiple, you're inheriting from more than one parent class. So let me just stop here to see if anybody has any question before I continue. Please, if this is not clear, just let me know so that I can explain. Like I said, the reason why we can say this is that inheritance is because we have a class. Now, the thing that links this class to this class, because in this bracket, we can see that this class is the employee class, which means that this manager class is inherited from what the employee class. So what that means is every single property, whether it is attribute, whether it is method that is here, also belongs to this class. Now, in this case, you have rich man class, you have rich woman class, you also have child. Now, this child class is also inherited from two persons. It's inherited from the rich man class. It's also inherited from the rich woman class. So it means every single thing that this rich man has, it belongs to this child. Every single thing that this woman has, it also belongs to this child. So this is what multiple inheritance. Why this is just a single parent class is what single inheritance. Let me just stop it to see if anybody has any questions. Like I said, the reason why you have the whole concept of inheritance is, I don't know if I deleted that part. Okay, I think this is it. It's because you can have a class like this, right? Which is, you can see, we are repeating this construct, you're also repeating the company method. So instead of having to repeat yourself, why not just find a way to link it, which is why we have to reduce it. So it means, the moment I do this, automatically it means that this manager class also has this particular construct, and it also has it, which is where the whole concept of inheritance come into play. So let me just stop here to see if anybody has any question. Like I said, if it is not clear, please just let me know so that I can go over it again.
Please, can you take it again? This single inheritance.
Oh, okay. Let me do that again. Right. Yeah. So let me just do that again. Like I said, the whole concept of inheritance is, so this was the example we had. We have two classes. Now we had the employee class and we also have the manager class, right? Okay, so we actually have two classes. We have the employee class, we also have the manager class. Now, in the employee class, you notice that it has a constructor and it also has a method. Now, if you look at the manager class, which is this class, it has the constructor. You know what I mean by constructor? This unit method is there. It has two methods, company method and manage method. Now, but we notice something, we notice the similarity between these two classes. Now, this class has the constructor, and it's only taking name. This also has the same thing. Now, this class also has company. Can you see this? Company method. This also has company, and it's basically the same thing. So it's like we are repeating ourselves, like because this same information you can also see it here, right? So it's there because it's like we already know that manager is an employee, but do we always have to repeat the manager's personal information? The employee also have to repeat his personal information. We also go to the manager and the manager's team and also do that. Is there a way for us to just link it so that we don't always have to repeat ourselves, right? So which is where the concept of inheritance comes in. So it means there's a way for us to link these two classes in such a way that we do not have to repeat the same information. So all I need to do is in the first class, create the information I need. Then this second class will now inherit from this class. So what it means is, you see this constructor, this method, this manager class also has access to it. So it means you can see we've gone from this to this. Now you can see we are not repeating this information again, like what we have here. Look at this, like this, what we have here. You can see this, we are not repeating it again. Now we've gone from this to this, because this is now inherited from this, which means automatically you also has access to this. So problem solved, which is where the whole concept of inheritance comes into play. Now, then I went for that to say that what that means is there are different types of inheritance. You have single, you have multiple, you have multi-level, you have hierarchical inheritance. So single inheritance would mean that you are inheriting from just a single parent class, which is why I give the example of Dangote. Imagine, for example, now, so a child inherits from Dangote, right? Just one person, right? Dangote, right? Dangote happens to be his father, for example. Inherit from, that's like single inheritance, because you're only inheriting from just Dangote, right? Now, if you look at this class, I still use the same example. This manager class is inherited from this employee class, which means he only has a single parent class, and that is the only class that is inherited from. You can see, so if I do M equals manager, then specify Victor. I specify Victor because the member is inheriting from this, which means that this constructor has name. So I have to specify the name here, which is what Victor. So if I do m.company, my wondering, but company is not here. Now remember that this has already inherited every single thing that is here. If I do m.company, I can see have access to this. Now for multiple inheritance, which is why I now give that example of, imagine, for example, now the child that is Dangote and the mother is Alakija, right? This is a rich man, this is also a rich woman. So it means that child is not just inherited from one parent, it's inherited from Dangote, who is his dad. And it's also inherited from Alakija, who is his mom. So it's like multiple inheritance, right? So what that means, which is why I decided to create two classes. A class called rich man, a class called rich woman, and a class called child, just so you understand the concepts behind multiple inheritance. For this stuff, I just created constructor property one, this one too, constructor property two. You can see this. Now, how do we specify multiple inheritance? We can see for single, we really just specify just one class. So for multiple, you're specifying what two class. The first class is inherited from, and the second class is also inherited, which is why it's called, because it's no longer single now. It has gone from one to two. So the question is, does it always have to be two? It can be two, it can be three, it can be four, which is why I now went for that to give an example. Like imagine Adeleke now is the person's uncle, right? Let's see, like it's very close to Adeleke. So it means Dangote is going to inherit from Dangote. It's going to inherit from Alakija's son. It's also going to inherit from Adeleke, which is his uncle, which is what multiple inheritance, which is why I was just trying to say the core concept behind it, right? So it means this child class inherited from this rich man class. It's also inherited from this rich man class. So it means every single thing that this rich man has, this child is inherited from that. Now, every single thing that this rich man has, this child is also inherited from that, which is why we call it multiple inheritance. So I don't know, is this clear enough?
Yeah, very clear. Thank you, sir.
Oh, okay. So please, does anyone has any question before we continue? Before we move to the third. After this, the last concept we want to cover is polymorphism. Then we are done. So anyone has any question regarding this before I talk about the third type of inheritance and the fourth type of inheritance? Does anybody has any questions? Okay, so if the explanation for single and multiple inheritance, if it is clear, can we just drop one in the chat so that I know that I can move to the next one, which is multi-level inheritance. So if the explanation is clear, can we just drop one in the chat so that I know that I can move to the next one, which is multi-level inheritance. It is multi-level inheritance. Please, I need more response. I want to be sure that the explanation is clear. I want to be sure that the explanation is clear. Please, can I get more response? So I was saying that if the explanation for single inheritance and for multiple inheritance, if it is clear, please can we just drop on the chat so that we can move proceed. Okay, thank you. Now the next one is multi-level inheritance. So when you say multi-level, what it means is inherit from this, right? Now let me explain how multi-level inheritance. And I think I'm not going to ask a question. Let me just create a class called device, right? And let's just say this device has a feature. I'm just trying to explain something. Let me just say print. What can we print? Let's just say basic device. Let me just leave that. That's right. Let's just copy this, right? Let me create another class. So let's call this smartphone, right? So let's call it smartphone. So let's say smartphone is just the narrative on this class called device. And let's just say that this smartphone as, sorry. Let's say the smartphone actually has a camera. So let me just do this, take this, right? And also let me copy this and create another cell. Now let me just call this smartwatch. And now this is smartphone. Let's just say track. I'm gonna just say track my blood pressure. I'm just giving just very basic. Let me just say track my blood. Track my... Now, what do you notice about these three classes? It's multi-level. How? Because this smartphone is inherited from device class. Then this smartwatch is inherited from smartphone. That's why it's called multi-level. I have a class called device. The smartphone is inherited from the class called device. Then we now have another class called smartphone, which is inherited from what? Smartphone, which is why we call it multi-level. So this inherits from this. Then now this smartwatch is now inherited from the smartphone device, right? The smartphone class. Let me go back it again. Smartphone is inherited from the device class. Now this smartwatch, you can see it's also inherited from it. So it's like this inherits from this, and this is now inheriting from this entities, which is why we call it multi-level inheritance, right? So I have a question, right? And my question is just, I just want us to be sure that we really understand the concept. So I think Adeleke, that's Davido's that. Okay. Let me put Davido's grandfather. right? Now let's say Davido's grandfather decided to give his property to Davido's father. I just want to be sure that you understand the concept, right? And Davido's father now in return now also gives property. I'm just giving an example. Give his property to his children. But let me just say Davido, for example. Now look at this. Davido's father inherits from his own from his own father. Then Davido now inherits from this. So can we say that this is multi-level inheritance? So if your answer is yes, you can drop one in the chat. If your answer is no, you can drop 0 in the chat. This is Davido's grandfather's father. So what I'm trying to say is his father inherits from his own father. Right? Why Davido also inherits from his own father? So this type of inheritance, like grandfather passes well to father, father now passes well to son. So can we say this type of inheritance? Can we call this multi-level inheritance? Right. If your answer is yes, drop one in the chat. If your answer is no, drop 0 in the chat. So yes, you are all correct. So the answer is yes, because Davido's grandfather decided to pass his wealth to Davido's father, which in return will also pass his own wealth to Davido, which is multi-level inheritance. So this is what. So well, if we get a difference, single inheritance, you're inheriting from one parent. Multiple inheritance, you're inheriting from more than one parent class. Multi-level inheritance, a class is inherited from one class, right? And another class is inherited from one class. So it means this is inherited from this class. Then this is now inherited from this class, which is why we call it multi-level inheritance, right? So now the last type of inheritance would be this one. After this, then we can now move on to polymorphism, right? So we know that we've been able to cover so sorry, we'll be done very soon. Hierarchical inheritance, right? So let me just change this to markdown. I'm just going to explain the whole concept of hierarchical inheritance, right? So let me just say class code, sorry. Let me just write this. Let's see, we have a developer, we have a designer. I just want to explain some. This is why I'm using the example. Let me just change this to designer. Right. So look at this. This is hierarchical because now what this means is you have more than one child class inherited from just a single parent class. You have 3 classes: class employee, class developer, class designer. Developer is inherited from this parent class. Designer is also inherited from this parent class. You can see this, right? This is what we call this. So what it means is you have more than one child class inherited from a single parent class, right? More than one child class inherited from what? Inherited from a single parent class, which is what you can see. Developer is inherited from the class employee. Designer is inherited from the class for the employee, right? This is pretty straightforward. Now that brings me to this question. I'm still going to just focus on Davido. Davido has his brothers, right? So now if the widow brothers, obviously we know that they are also going to. So let's say the widow's sister, the widow's brother, right? I know you asked, but let me just leave it as one, right? Now, will you say that, okay, we know that all of them are going to inherit from Adeleke. It's Adeleke himself, right? Now, my question is, what type of inheritance will you call this? The widow's sister, the widow's brother, they are all inheriting from Adeleke. That's the widow's father. Now, will you say this is multi-level inheritance? Or you will say this is this? Remember, I mentioned that this is when you have more than one child from inheriting from a single parent class. So this is my question. So we know that the widows, I'm giving this example just so we can really understand what I'm trying to say. So now, if you feel like this is multi-level, you can drop one in the chat. If you feel like this is this, you can drop two in the chat. So this type of inheritance, we use state is multi-level, or you will say it is this. So if it is multi-level, drop one in the chat. If it is this, drop two in chat. Okay, thank you very much. Sure, it is two because these are these are like simplest, but they are just inherited from a single parent class. So just to give a recap of everything I've talked about, this single inheritance, inherited from one parent class. Multiple, you are inheriting from more than one parent class, right? Where's the next one? Multi-level inheritance. What did I know? It means a class is inherited from one class. That class, another class is inherited from it, which is why I give this illustration of those grandfather, father, and this, right? Then this is when more than one child class is inherited from what? A single parent class. This is why it is called this. Right. Okay. So if the whole concept of inheritance, if it is clear, you can just drop one in the chat. If the concept of inheritance, if it is clear, we can drop one in the chat. If the whole concept of inheritance, if it is clear, we can drop one in the chat. Can drop one in the chat. One in the chat. One in the chat. Okay. So this is the last concept. Then after this, we are done. We can close till Wednesday, right? So can I continue? Can I just cover this concept, or everyone is tired? Can we cover this last concept then? We know that we are done with the OP. Just drop your response in the chat. Okay, Mr. You want to say something? Sorry. Or is it
Yeah,
Musa?
please continue. Please
Oh,
continue.
okay. Oh, okay, thank you. So for polymorphism, like I said, yeah, like how do I put it now? You're trying to allow objects to exist in different form. Let me use that word, right? Whether it's method, right? Object with the same method to exist in different form, right? That's just the whole concept about. Let me just add it here. Allows objects with the same method to behave in different forms. Which is marked down. To behave in different forms, which is why I think we looked at method overriding. So you just want something to behave in different form, right? Okay. Let me just try to give this example. I know there are people who are, I'm looking for the right one, are multi-talented. There are people who they can sing. They can do all sort of things, right? So it's like just one person, but you can get like different this thing from the person. The person can be a singer, the person is a developer, the person is a comedian, that kind of thing. So that kind of attitude or that kind of behavior, we'll say it's polymorphism because it's just one person, but only you can sing, only you can code. Only you can actually make people laugh. So it's like just 130, but actually has a lot of talent, right? So that kind of behavior we just is more, right? So now let me create. So the first method we're looking at is method variety, right? And I'm going to try to just make this brief, right? So method variety, right? Remember the whole idea is once you to achieve polymorphism. Now we have two classes. Let's say a class called reports, and let me just do this. Let me just say Excel reports. Let's say PDF reports. So I'm using this example. Now, so look at this Excel reports and other PDF reports. I'm just trying to right now look at something, right? Now this class is inherited from this class, right? Now let's look at something. I'm going to explain, or I'm going to still explain this. Just all right. Let me just copy this. So, my thing. I want to copy this. So I'm going to explain now. I just want to write everything so that it's easy for me to explain. Let me use doc so that you can get what I'm trying to. Now look at something. Now we have two different classes. We have class called Excel reports. We have class called PDF. So let's say I want to create a report. Then I want to send the file in Excel file, or want to use PDF. I'm just trying to explain something. Now I want to use PDF. Or you want to save the file, the report in Excel, or you want to save the report in a PDF, right? Okay. Now, if you look at these two classes, you notice that it's a form of inheritance, right? Because this class is inherited from this class. You can see the PDF class is also inherited from this Excel report class, right? Now, but looking at this, they both have the same method. This has a method called export. This also has a method called export. Now, if you look at the content is different. Remember, I said the whole concept is just to explain polymorphism. So it's like we might have the same method, but you are going to get different results, right? You're going to get different results. We have the same method, but we are going to get different results, right? Good. It's just like saying two persons might have the same iPhone 17, iPhone 17, right? But what they are using it might be different. This one might just use his own phone for mailing pictures. And this other person is just for mailing phone calls, right? But it's still the same iPhone 17, but they are being used for different purposes. Or this one is using it to take pictures. This another person is also using it to like how do I put that? Just to make phone calls, right? So these two classes have the same method. Remember, this is inherited from this class. Now, where does the method variety come from? Now, it means that if I should do so, what we did was we created a list. Now, this list contains, now we decided to create an object. Object of, if you want to create an object of the class, this is how you're going to create it. Let me just, not as in I want to create an object of this report class. Let me just copy this. All right. This is how I've created it. If I also want to create for the second class, this is how we would have done it, right? Now, instead of having them separate, we try to put them in a list, which is where this comes into play. You can see this in a list. So that once you put them in a list, you can easily do a for loop so that we can access the values for each of them, right? And we did it for doc in obj, do doc.export. So we wanted to access the method. Now we notice that they have the same method. We wanted to see, are we going to get the same results or are we going to get different results? Now, once we did this, in the first instance, Excel report, you can see it gave us Excel report. Now, it is for the second instance, which is this, you can see it gives us PDF. So this implies that it is still the same method, but the methods behave differently. The method in the first instance printed Excel reports. In the second instance, the printed was PDF reports. So is it a concept of polymorphism? Yes. Why? Because we have the same method, but the behavior is different. This particular behavior, it printed Excel reports. For this other behavior, it printed PDF reports. So how does the method variety come into play? Remember, this whole concept is polymorphism. But polymorphism is just like the way inheritance has different types, single, multiple, multi-level. Polymorphism also has different, I don't want to use the word types, but let me use the word different methods. Now, why this is called method variety is because this class inherits from this class. Now, they have the same method. So instead of this method printing out Excel report, because I told you that once this class inherits from, it means it inherits everything, every stuff that is here also belongs to this. But because it also has the same method with this, when you call an export method, it only prints out what is in its own, which means that this method has overridden this particular method, which is why for the first time, you can see this, it prints Excel reports. So for this particular class, which is the PDF report, it now prints PDF reports. So it's like we have the same methods, but the behaviors are different. We have the same method, but we are getting different results. That's just the whole concept of what polymorphism. Let me take this again. You have two classes. A class called Excel report. So we want to generate a report. Either you want to generate Excel, sorry, we want to save our report. Either I want to save it as Excel file or I want to save it as PDF. Now we said, okay, let's create a class called Excel reports. And let's create another class called PDF reports. Now for the Excel report, we said export, which means you just print Excel input. For the PDF report, just print PDF reports. Now, but you notice that there's a link between this class and this class. How do we know that? This class is inherited from this class, which means that everything that this class has also belongs to this class. But there's a problem. The problem is these two classes, they have the same method. So the question is, if I now call this export method on this class, is it going to print out the result of this? Or is going to print out the result of this? Because remember, it has inherited from this thing, which means it also has this method called import. So is it going to print out Excel reports? Or is it going to print out PDF reports? Which is why I wanted to do this. It did doc.export. So so we wanted to create object of these two classes. The first instance, we created an object of Excel report. You can see when we call this, we are creating an object. But instead of having them on separate line, we decided to put them in a list so that we can iterate. We can use a for loop to print to go the first time, print the value of exports, go the second time, also print the value of export, which is what we did here. The moment I did doc.exports, remember it is still the same method, exports, but we are getting different results, which is in this first time we got Excel reports. We went again. So you can say, but this has already inherited from this, which means you also display Excel reports. No, it has its own method. So this method will override this, which is why we call it method overriding, so that it can display its own result, which is why we have Excel reports and PDF reports. Let me just stop it to see if anybody has a question before we take the last method of polymorphism and we are done. Please, if this is not clear, just let me know so that I can explain it again. If this is not clear, like I said, please just let me know so that I can explain it again. If this is not clear, let me know so that I can explain it again. So I guess I need more response. I need more response. If it is clear, you can just drop one in the chat. If it is clear, just drop one in the chat. If it is clear, drop one in the chat. Drop one in the chat. So I think the day we treated this polymorphism, I think Bolan asked the question. Bolan was like, Victor, what if, because the moment we call export, we notice that we're getting different results. Well, Victor, what if we want to, I always want to see this print, this thing there. Like, instead of it printing its own, I don't want that. I want to print what is here. Victor, how do we do that? Which is where this super comes into play, right? So let me just do this, right? Put this here. And let's do this, right? And put this here. You can see this. So let's say super, which is where, like I said, this is where the super comes into play, right? So super, like I think I was saying that you specify the report itself, right? I think it was Donna who asked that question, if I'm not mistaken, right? So let's still do the same thing here, right? So can you see this now? So Donna asked the question that because you notice that he's always printing out this. What if I want you to print out? You should still refer to the print. Just anytime I call it export, please always print out the report. So this super is to refer to this class. If I say super, super means please check the parent class. I know the parent class is exact report. Always ensure that anytime you call this export, please and make sure that you go to the parent. Remember, I said this parent class is also super class. Go to the parent class and you can now print out the exports for me. I don't want you to print out your own. I rather want you to print out the parent class, which is why I did super, which means parent class, then print out the results in exports, right? This is where the super comes into play, right? So then the last method, which is the doc typing, then we are done.
Please, please re-explain
Okay.
that super.
Oh, okay. So now let me explain super, right? So this super would mean that now this super would mean that, so I was saying when we did this, I think that's when I asked that question, that why is it that anytime you record this, it's always printing out its own stuff? What if I wanted to always print out this result that is in a parent class? So the only way for us to do that is, instead of us writing print PDF reports, what I need to do is just to remove it and say super. Now this super is telling is that please, I want you to go to the super class. Now I want you, which one is super again? This is a super class. Remember I said that you want to call it the super class, or you want to call it the parent class, right? Either you want to call it super class, or you always want to call it the parent class. You can see this. So it means, please go to the parent class and check the reports, the exports method that is there. That is what I want you to print out, not your own. You know, if it was like this, we did print PDF reports. We already removed this and said, okay, you know what? For this, please always make sure you go to the parent class, which is super, and access the export method there, so that we can always get the same result anytime we call that method. So Messi, I don't know if this is clear.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Then for doc typing is still similar. The only difference is doc typing. I think I should just close with that example I gave. Not was it Ibrahim that asked? Let's say PayPal. Let me just say dev. How can I so let's let's just print pay in PayPal. Right. Print pay in PayPal. This is another method for polymorphism. Let me just copy this. Which other method do we have? Bank transfer, right? Bank transfer. Bank transfer, right? So it's pay using bank transfer. Now pay using bank transfer, right? Now let's create make payment. Now so let's say make payment to take in payment method. Then it's going to do sorry. It's going to do payment method dot pay. This is what it's going to do, right? Just going to do payment method of paying, right? Now let's explain. I'm going to explain what this is doing. So initially, let's pass PayPal. Like I said, I'm going to explain what this is doing. So good. Now, I think someone asked the question that what is the usefulness of this doc type? And I said doc typing in practical scenario would be when you maybe are trying to get something from an e-commerce website and you're trying to make payment. Now, you know, when you get to the page where you're supposed to make payments, and I say that you're paying by PayPal or card or bank transfer. So let me just focus on PayPal and bank transfer. So they are paying by PayPal, they are paying by bank transfer. Now, PayPal is a different PayPal and bank transfer. Or it's not using, but let me just say card. So I don't. So it's for me to. Let me just say pay using your card, right? Either Visa, Mastercard. Let me use like that. Good. So now PayPal, or whether it's using Visa or Mastercard, let me just like there are different payment methods. Whether you pay using PayPal or pay using your card, whether it's Mastercard or let me just generalize and say card, right? So you're paying using your PayPal or you're paying using card. Now there are different payment methods. Now the only thing that connects them together is anytime you want to make payments, anytime you want to make payments, you see PayPal, you will see your card, whether you want to use your Visa card or MasterCard. But aside that, they are different. They are different payment methods. They are not owned by the same person, right? Like it's different. Don't have PayPal is different. Don't have this card is different. That kind of thing, right? So it means that anytime you want to make payments, what connects them together is anytime a customer wants to make payments. So it means that for doc typing, these are two different classes. So you are making they both have a method called paying. This is saying pay in PayPal. This is saying pay using card. Now, is there a way for us to link it together? We still achieve this polymorphism. Remember, I said polymorphism means that we have the same method, but it's giving us different results. Good. So we now try to create a function called make payments. So for this make payments, it's going to take in something. So it will now trigger this payment method dot paying. Because in the first instance, we called make payments. What did it do? It gave us pay in paper. We called it again. It gave us pay using bank transfer. Can you see this? Now it means that we are still calling the same function, but we are getting results. Like saying I am still making payments, right? But I'm using different payment methods. You could be that maybe my friends shop from the same website. You decide to use PayPal. Myself, I decided to use my card. Now, he's making payments. I'm also making payments. We are both making payments. But he is using his own card. Me, I'm using PayPal. Can you see? It's like we are doing the same process. We are using different payment methods. So it means what I'm trying to say is you're still calling the same function, but you are getting different results. We are both making payments, but we are using different payment method. That's just the whole concept of polymorphism. So that's like a particular scenario where this doc typing is being used. Let me just start with this, see if anybody has any questions. Does anybody has any questions? Please, if this is not clear, let me know so that I can explain it again. If this is not clear, please let me know so that I can explain it again.
Please go over it
If this
again.
is oh, okay. So let me go over it again, right? Now, this is doc typing. So I think I said the practical scenario would be how do I call it now? Like you are trying to make payment. Now, and this is very true because most of the time for all those e-commerce platforms, the truth is they always have different API. Now, for example, now it means an e-commerce, let me just focus on, let me just say an e-commerce platform. Now, they are trying to create a page where they allow customers to make payments. Now, they will now have to think, okay, how do we allow customers to make payments, right? So someone could say, let's integrate a Paystack API. Someone could say, let's integrate a PayPal API. That's the second method. Another person could say, let's integrate maybe like that allows them to pay using their card, which is 3. So it means we have different APIs, an API for Paystack, an API for PayPal, and an API using card. I'm just trying to add that, right? Now, but these are 3 different methods. These are 3 different APIs. So the only reason why they are coming together is because we want to create a functionality that allows the customers to make payments. Right now, let's come to this. I was just trying to give you a practical scenario of doc typing. Now we have 2 classes, a class called PayPal and a class called card. Now they both have the same method, paying and paying. Remember, the whole concept of polymorphism is to ensure that you are using the same method, right? But you are getting different results, right? So good. So they both have the same method, paying, because PayPal is used for making payments. Card is also used for making payment, right? But how do we connect them together? So it means that the only thing that connect them together is anytime anybody wants to make payments. This is why I give that particular example. You have an e-commerce platform. They created a page so that once your customer clicks on this, they are taken to this page. So this page now allows them to decide. Do they want to use Paystack? Do they want to pay using PayPal? Do they want to pay using card? So you can see these are 3 different payment methods. But the only thing that connects them together is because the customer wants to make payment, which is why I give this example. So it means the moment I use make payment, which is the function, this make payment takes in the payment method. You know, the moment they click on it, but they have to decide, do you want to use PayPal? Do you want to use Paystack? Do you want to use card? Right? So that you can now take it. So they are different customers are using different payments. They are still doing the same process, but they are getting different results. So it means that we have a function called make payments. Now we call make payment the first time. We pass in this value. You can see we got pay in PayPal. We call that same method, make payments. You can see we are getting pay using bank account. But the question is, we are still using the same function, but we are getting different results. So that's just the whole concept of polymorphism. This is just doc typing. You have 2 separate classes. They are not related, but you find a way to relate them together by using a method. So this method, how do I call it now? This method sort of like connects these 2 stuff together. So with this method, you're able to call it the first time, you get pay in PayPal, then you pass in the second class, which is this. Okay, I think I already changed. Let me change this to cut the count transfer. Let me run this. Run. So you can see this. So you are paying using card. 2 different classes. You now decide to create a function that connects the 2 classes together so that you can achieve polymorphism. So I don't know, is this clear now, please? Let's see.
Thank you,
Missy, is this
sir.
clear now?
Okay, sir.
Oh,
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is where we are going to stop because we said we are going to cover. So we covered from constructors to encapsulation to inheritance to polymorphism. Right. I'm going to stop it to see if anybody has any questions before we end the class, please. Does anybody has any questions? Okay, so if everything we've talked about, if it is clear, can you just drop one in the chat? I want to be sure that we've been able to cover, or at least I've been able to explain some the concepts we worked with for, and we now have a clear understanding of the different concepts. Please let us drop one in the chat. I need more response, please. I want to be sure that the session was really, really productive. Okay. So I think that is all about that, right? So for the group stuff itself, right? Let's say latest by Tuesday evening, right? We should all just submit the just let me know once you are done with the stuff. I think I'm going to create a drive where we can submit the clean CSV files to or clean Excel files to, right? So yes, I think that's all. Okay, so thank you for joining. Please do have a wonderful week. Thank you very much.